Street live brought. Oh, we got the thump. We got the big thump. Right, so can I start? Yeah, okay. Is that echo? Hollywood here, isn't it? Good morning. I'm Boyd Elliott, the chair of the committee, and I would like to welcome you all to this meeting of the Overview Committee that is being broadcast live and recorded for publication. So if we start with agenda item 1, the minutes of the last meeting held on the 24th of January 2024, and to ask the committee to approve the minutes of the last meeting. Show of hands, all in favour? For those who are there. Thank you. Okay, that's agreed. Agenda item 2, apologies for absence.
We have no apologies.
Okay, thank you. Agenda item 3, declaration of interest. If any councillor or officer has an interest in any matter on the agenda, you should declare it now. Please raise your hand now if you have an interest to declare. If you have an interest to declare, you should state what type of interest it is and give brief details. Okay, that's fine. We'll go to agenda item 4, first substantive item on the agenda, the update on the council's climate change activities and climate emergency response. Now, Councillor Neil Clark is on our NCC business in London, I believe. So, welcome, Councillor John Cotty, sorry, and Mark Walker. So I'm going to hand over if you'd like to present. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So we've got two closely connected reports this morning for overview, both related to climate change. The first is an more internally focused report, looking at the council's assets and the council's activities, and it details positive progress that we've made so far in meeting the ambition to be carbon neutral by 2030. The second report this morning, which we'll have later on, is an outward-looking one, and that really sets our external ambitions in terms as a place-shaping leader in the county to look at partners, etc., to help them move towards being net zero. So the first item, then item 4, I don't intend to go through the report and the plan in a great amount of detail. I'm sure you've all read and absorbed it, but I'll just make a few points first by way of an introduction. So in paragraphs 8 to 21, it sets out our latest available emission results and also how we actually approach greenhouse gas emissions reportings. And just to say, members will be aware that the council is no under obligation actually to report emissions, but this council has chosen to do so. In that report, it sets out how we're transparent about our approach to calculating emissions. Our published emissions report sets out clearly what's included and also what's not included. We also use a nationally recognised greenhouse gas accounting tool, and that's been developed by the Local Government Association and also local partnerships. So it's a recognised, nationally recognised tool. And in terms of the way we've used it, we've taken a pragmatic approach and regarding which activities are actually included in the calculations. And that's based on significance of emissions and also the availability of robust data. So the reporting in there covers the major sources of direct and indirect emissions in 4 areas. So as you can see from the report, the big areas are energy use in buildings, our highways assets, that's street lighting, signs, signals, fleet vehicles, and staff business travel. And we're making good progress. If you have a look at paragraph 17, the table there, it summarises how we're doing, and you see that we've made a 39% reduction in our reported emissions compared to the baseline in 2019-20. And paragraph 18 then sets out how we've done that, what are the differences of the actions that have been taken in order to make that happen. And then the chart at paragraph 24 gives you the relative size of our emissions in 22-23. So you can see what the mix is, if you like, of the total emissions that are made. We've done well so far, but we know there is a lot more still to do, and that leads us on to how we're going to do that and the carbon reduction plan. As Appendix A, you've got the carbon reduction plan. That was a 10-year document from 2022 to 2032. That was published in February last year, and that sets out some of the actions that we're taking on the big areas in more detail. Again, highways, property, staff, travel, fleet. The report you've got today, item 4, summarises the headline actions between paragraphs 27 and 56 for your consideration and for your feedback today, please. I suppose one last thing I'll say is make an offer to all members. In paragraph 36 and 37, it talks about carbon literacy training. There's some absolutely excellent training out there for members and officers. So if you haven't done it already, I'd really recommend it's something that you should all be doing. The recommendations are on page 9 and 10 today. And I say thank you. I'm happy to take any questions and, of course, any feedback that's set out in the recommendations. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Firstly, I'll move the recommendations as detailed in the report and ask for a seconder.
Seconded.
Okay. Now I'll open it up for debate. Do I have any questions, Councillor Creamer? Jim, could you put your...
My apologies. Again, thank you very much for the report. It's very interesting and enlightening. And as far as the carbon trading company training is concerned, if there is any, I wouldn't mind being put on the list if you're keeping a list. I've got several questions. I'll just find some of them. Item 30, specific. I'll go through all. There's only 3 or 4. They're fairly short questions. Item 33 and 34, the greening of the fleet. It says that there is a survey at the moment, predominantly of transport and travel services, and key findings are being evaluated. I just wondered if you know when that would be, and whether it be coming back to this committee, for instance. That would be interesting. And other things on the climate change. Impact of home working on net zero. The Office of National Statistics accounts show that on a residency basis, households are bigger emitters of greenhouse gases in any industry sector. So the question is, what % of our staff actually do work from home? And I won't expect all this immediately, obviously. What actions have we set as council taken to understand the climate impact of our policy to encourage home working? What steps have we taken to assist staff in transitioning to having climate sustainable heating and energy in their homes if they are working from home? It's a cost to both in some respects. Indirect emission policy, for instance, as well. Since declaring climate emergency, we've supported several big policy decisions that seem to be counterintuitive when it comes to net zero commitments, including the idea of inland freeport, which expects to be successful on the basis of a huge increase in air freight, which is one of the most climate intensive modes of freight distribution. So have any analysis of what the impact would be of doubling air freight traffic in the East Midlands? So do we have any information or predictions on our policy concerning that? Thank you.
And thanks for those questions there. So training, yeah, we can absolutely get. We'll make sure that we share the offer, to members in terms of when the carbon literacy training is available. So thank you for that. In terms of fleet and the TTS fleet, the travel and transport fleet, that makes up 75% of the fleet of the county council. It's currently work, as you say, is ongoing. At the moment, due to obviously the financial implications of greening the fleet and also trying to get a handle on what the future need of fleet might be. We've got some big things going on at the moment with day centre review and with combined authority as well. We're still doing that analytical piece, I guess, to work out what's the art of the possible within a financial envelope, but absolutely moving towards greening the fleet. In terms of home working and the climate impact, I guess that's something I could take away and do a little bit more work on. I think there has been some work on that. It's really difficult at the moment, obviously, because in terms of looking at individual people's patterns and what that might look like, and what heating systems they might have at home versus their travel distances. So that's quite a complex piece of work to be done there. It's something obviously that myself and the team can take away to have a look into and see if we can give you any more accurate figures on that one as well. In terms of the policy decision on inland Freeport, I'm to be honest, I'm not aware. I wasn't engaged in that decision, so I'd have to take that away and maybe provide some feedback if the committee would like on that question for you, Councillor Creamer, afterwards.
Yeah, good to get some feedback here to the committee. Councillor Fold, you're next.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, just before I ask the questions, I think having the Freeport on the work programme would be really good because it's something that's been concerning us. That might be something that might include you, but might be a wider remit as well. I think it's a really good question, but it's a big question, isn't it? So thanks for that, yeah. And thank you for the report. And I can see within what I would describe as the constraints of the kind of policy that's going on here, actually you've made some real progress. So thank you for that. But what the overall kind of comment I want to make is it isn't particularly ambitious what you're setting yourself, nor is it particularly transformational. I mean, if you look at, say, for example, things like street lighting, I mean, Labour started that in 2013. It's just been going on. So I don't really see what is different and better and transformational. Actually, really creative is actually really looking at this properly with a real intention of doing something substantial and transformational across the board. This isn't a criticism of you, Mark, I have to say, but so that's my worry. I mean, just take, for example, things like the commissioning that we do and the buildings that we do, schools, roads. I mean, to some extent, we have influence on houses. You know, where is our kind of real push to make sure that those buildings are built in a green way? And yeah, and again, I know this is outside your remit, Mark, but it just doesn't feel as if we're really going for it on climate change, to be honest with you. And on that note, just a couple of things. I just wanted to ask about the table on page. It's table 1 on page 24. You've got the fuel used by fleet, and then you've got an asterisk saying this figure has been adjusted down from the original 1920 greenhouse gas emissions baseline report due to errors in data. I mean, what's that mean? And it's interesting group of figures, but there's not much detail in there, and I know sometimes we get too much detail, but that really does look kind of very cryptic. And we could do with digging down a little bit. And then I wanted to ask a kind of very specific question about Top Big Hay, because we're increasingly concerned in the Labour group that we're really not getting proper progress reports about how that's going and how much it's likely to cost. And I'm not just talking about financial cost here, I'm talking about costing the environment too. I mean, they're due to run in an environmentally friendly manner, great, that's good. But construction, we know, is the third highest sector globally for greenhouse gas emissions, according to a report by the House of Commons Library. Now, I know this building is said to be kind of very inefficient, but we still haven't seen detail on that either. But assuming that's right, I'm sure it is right, have you mapped the carbon emissions for the construction of Top Wilko? And if so, please can we have some estimates? Any information you've got about Top Wilko, we'll be very grateful because we've had no real update since last summer. And I think I'm sorry, but that is from a scrutiny point of view. I don't think that's good.
Okay, to come back on it, Mark.
Yeah, thank you for those points. In terms of buildings in general, there is, obviously we've recently been joined by Wayne Bexton, who's taken over our property portfolio. Wayne is a sort of a fairly major regional player in terms of net zero and passion around that. And I'm sure through the business office rationalisation programme, carbon will be a key consideration in terms of how the authority moves forward. And again, I'm sure we can provide an update or reassurance after this meeting in terms of what that looks like. Sorry, the table, you mentioned the table, didn't you, on page 24, and a question around data. And I'm wondering, Phil, are you able to pick up that one in terms of I think there was an error in some data a couple of years ago that's been corrected. So Phil here is our energy and carbon manager. So I'll introduce Phil, please.
Thanks, Mark. Yeah, sorry, I'm not sure I'm able to really help with that because I don't sort of collect that data. But often with these things, when you sort of revisit to do it the following year, you can see that there might have been an error in the previous year. So, we're just being honest about that, but we would have reported slightly higher emissions for the fleet vehicles previously, and we've just adjusted that down because we then found that there was probably some little glitch in the data, and it's quite common that happens. You go back and you revisit the data, and you can see that something that we might have done then is not necessarily the same way that we would treat it now. And the important thing, obviously, is the direction of travel, because we're aiming towards being carbon neutral. So it's not so much where we've come from, but where we're heading towards. That's the important thing to remember.
So through your chair, is that 24% lower? Is that accurate? Is that what you said?
The accuracy in the end column change from baseline is accurate, and the overall thing is accurate. What we've just redone is we've slightly readjusted the baseline figures. So if we'd kept them where they were, we'd have been looking slightly better. What I'm saying is we've adjusted it to be more honest about what it was.
Transparent. There'd been an anomaly at the beginning, so gone back, revisited that data, and been transparent with you. So it's the truth rather than being an inflated figure. Okay.
Yeah. Clearly, if you wanted to know more, I could arrange to find that out for you.
Okay. I'm sure we'll revisit it. Okay, thank you, Councillor Fowler. I'll bring Councillor Jackson in.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Yeah, an interesting paper and well presented. Thank you. I think we're all aware that there will be new technologies coming along all the time, which will affect this as an ongoing basis. Making it a lot easier to hit the targets, etc., with a lot more different fuels. I didn't see a lot in here about solar power, batteries, air source heating, ground source heating on our properties. Notice to save the carbon, this, that, the other. I mean, I know we're not domestic planning authority. Can't understand why we're building new houses or new buildings today without any of this technology into it. It should be a compulsory thing, going forward. Like we're building houses today, yet we're heading for net zero, and we're not doing anything about it. And I just wonder where we are with that, with all the new buildings, all the offices that we are. I know probably Wilko is going to have all this on it, but but we are schools out there, etc., We can make those net zero, I think, with the right technologies out there now.
Of course, yes.
Okay, yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, absolutely. Take your point on board around internal buildings, as it were. And I think if the chair would like us to do that, we can provide an update in terms of buildings and specifically pick up your points about, or give you more detail in terms of solar panels, batteries, the use of that sort of technology in our buildings. In terms of housing authorities, district councils, and planning, etc., we're going to be coming on to the net zero framework in the next item, which is how we're going to set out what we've achieved so far and our ambitions and expectations on partner agencies. So I'd see that as a route through to trying to encourage planning authorities to take this much more seriously, because we've all got to put a lot of work and effort into this if we're going to make significant inroads. And I think as you'll see in the next paper, the county council impacts between 2 and 5% of emissions for Nottinghamshire. We can influence probably a third of Nottinghamshire's emissions, so we've got to use that our place leader role in order to work with key partners to get them to understand what the issues are and how they can help to put their shoulder to the wheel on these sort of issues.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Guilfoyle. That's the last councillor signal to speak. If anyone else would.
Thank you, Chairman. Just in support of what Councillor Jackson says in relation to planning. I mean, we do sell land. We do, in some cases, build on our own land. And I think what we should be doing is using that as a way and a means. Because I agree with you about new properties. The properties are going up and they're still not putting solar panels on one, and they're still not, there are other things inside the property and things like that I've been on about for years in relation to community safety issues. But the thing for me is, we should be encouraging, and probably our influence is going to be through local plans. I know, but the trouble is a lot of local plans have just been done. Some aren't going through
new stages, and I think it's how we can influence that, and so that developer know from the onset what we expect. Because a lot of the time it's thrown at them at a stage and they go, well, we wouldn't have come here if we'd have known that, you know. Whereas I think we've got to be open and honest with them and say, this is what we want to see from you. So I agree with that. Just in relation to the lighting, I hope we can look at extending onto the highway signage as well, because it is, it's surprising. You don't realise until you think about it how much highway signage there is. Sometimes in comparison to street lighting, it is significant around the areas. So I hope that we can extend it to that, and just link with that. I mean, when we started that project off of the LED street lighting many years ago, when we were the administration, there were a number of grants that were available for that to enable us to do that. And I just wondered within here what grants are available right across, so that authorities such as ourselves and businesses can get that assistance in some of these changeovers, if there's anything there. Well, and if there is, if we can signpost people into that, because I think education is also a big issue around this, because there's still a lot of, as you know, there's still a lot of skeptics, including right across the board about net zero and climate change in general. So if there are grants, and the other side would be, if there's an area where we believe that the costs of doing it may be so significant that it puts a burden, although we can see the benefit in the long term, there is a burden for doing that sometimes. You've really got to alter your programmes to be able to do it. Whether there is that opportunity then to lobby government to say, look, you've got to, you want to meet some of these targets, we want to do. Actually, you ought to be now changing that grant from street lighting for X, Y, or Z, whichever costs us the most to sort of try to achieve. And where we are on that, whether we can lobby the government to actually to look at those types of grants.
Okay, thank you, Glenn. Do you want to come back on that? Good
Yeah, thank you. So the highway signage, the highway signage is a really good example, as you say. So at the via Continuous Improvement Board, there is a proposal coming forward to look at other lighting. But you're right. There's a balance here in terms of looking at the technology available, the current technology costs, as well. So that's a sort of fine balance. But there is a that's our next place that I think we'll be going. And as part of that piece of work, yes, we'll be looking for all the available grants that are out there, that there may be available in order to help to do that piece of work, because it's it will be beneficial, as you can see from the amount of emissions that come from highways. The government obviously is now providing some different forms of funding in general terms, and we've recently been successful in being awarded 5.6 million, I think it is, in the local electric vehicle infrastructure charging grant. So, and we'll keep putting those applications in. We'll keep looking for those grants to help us to achieve what we need to do here. So rest assured that we will be seeking all financial support that we possibly can.
Councillor Kerry.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Thank you very much for the report. In terms of the reductions, percentage change from the baseline, I understand the point about the baseline changing. Is there another factor that needs to be included in these numbers? The council over the years from 2019, that baseline has changed not only in terms of the emissions and how we monitor them, but also in the change in the amount of work done by the council. So we've got an increased population. I know it's small numbers compared to the amount here, and also the level of our services has increased: adult social care, children's, etc. So we're actually we're doing more for in volume terms for the residents of Nottinghamshire. So that will have had also an impact on the emissions. So I'm just wondering, the figures of 39% average actually is probably a little bit understated if you take into account the increases in demand that the council is servicing.
Yeah, thank you for that point. That's a really interesting one, and that's something again I can take away and have a look at using the if we can use the tools that are out there. Let's say the recognised tools to take a look at that. Obviously, when we do these calculations, they there's quite a lot of effort has to go into gathering all the data. But yeah, we can have a look at if we can do some sort of rebasing, if you like, to make a fair comparison. And again, if the chair would like that, we can offer an update to the committee at some point later on that one.
Please, thank you, Councillor Ogle.
Thank you, Chairman. I just thought it'd be useful, Chairman, if members were made aware of the benefits of carbon, because there's millions of people alive today, and last thank you to the increased carbon in the air, and the plants in dry areas produce more volume of crop in droughty areas because they make better use of the moisture with the increased carbon in the air, and a lot of those places are marginal where the starvation has taken place in the past, and some of those areas there's millions of people alive today that wouldn't have been without that. So you would just need to keep that in mind, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Ogle. Always good to have a knowledgeable farmer on your committee. Councillor Adams, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, interesting point from Councillor Ogle there. I think that's important to have expertise and understanding in real life scenarios rather than sort of sometimes stuff that's just built on virtue signalling. The greenhouse gas emissions report is great to see. I think we've done incredible work there. Obviously, we're aware the UK has reduced its greenhouse gas emissions by over half since 1990 levels, and it was great to see that. Not only that, but we were leading that in terms of worldwide economies. So fantastic to see that we're replicating and working to achieve even more of that locally. I've done the carbon literacy training. It was fantastic. I really enjoyed it. It was interesting. And even if you believe climate change is good or indifferent, I think it's important to understand all sides of the debate. In terms of fleet greening, also just want to really congratulate you on taking time with this, because some local authorities have jumped too quickly, I think, and they've started to bring things like HVO on board, hydrogenated vegetable oil and things like that. And although it is an option, it can cost a lot more. It does cost a lot more to fuel vehicles and can have negative impacts on, specifically a lot of it contains palm oil, which can have negative impacts on wildlife abroad. A lot of rainforest is being cleared to grow palm, and so it's good that you're taking your time on that. And I also know from my experience sitting where John did not so long ago that the cost of transferring the likes of our big trucks to battery powered is a 3 times investment based on what we're used to paying for diesel vehicles. So again, we've got to really think about when we're spending other people's money, which we do in this authority, we've got to make sure that they're getting a decent return for that money, and we're not doing it just to make ourselves look good and sound good, which is great to see you're taking that time. I wanted to touch on Councillor Guilfoyle's point around about what he was saying about green properties, and also Councillor Roger Jackson's point. There's something called Part L, and I don't know if any of you have heard about Part L, but Part L was introduced and went live in June the 15th, 2022, and Part L insists that new properties that have planning permission granted after that date include a high reduction in energy usage. Actually, it's 27% reduction in emissions as part of their ambition. So the new regulations are part of the new building standards that we launched in 2025. So all of the things you're saying around new properties should have things like air source heat pumps, ground source heat pumps, whatever it is, solar panels, better insulation. Insulations go up to 150 mil. So there's lots of things being done in these properties to achieve better energy usage. And this ties back to my point around, this is why we've got to be so clever with the way we do
green energy. It's got to be financially viable as well, and that's for homeowners. So they've got to see a drop in their bills in order for it to make sense. It can't just be done in order for some ideological belief around something. It's got to have a financial reference point. And I think that ties in, if it's costing us less in our homes, it should be costing them less from a tax basis as well in terms of our council's operations. So, yeah, I just want to commend you really on really giving this some thought and not just diving in. And like I said, we've got to be absolutely careful when we're spending other people's money to achieve net zero, that they are getting a financial return, and also it's not costing this council increased amounts of money outside of what it should do to run a council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Councillor Adams. So before we move to the vote, I'm going to bring Councillor Green. Do you want to come back on something?
Yeah, just very quickly, because Councillor Adams brought up an extremely good point about responsible sourcing. When it comes to Moxie, for instance, for argument's sake, Gedling doesn't use palm oil. It actually responsibly gets the fuel. So there is an issue about responsibility and not just getting it just because it says environmentally. You have to make sure it's a responsibility. So that needs to be put somewhere in the document as well, about responsibly sourcing whatever you're sourcing.
Thank you. So the recommendations have been moved and seconded. Going to take a vote. All in, have you got some? Oh, sorry, you got some extra recommendations. Okay.
So hopefully I've got everything. So firstly, that further information on the impact of the council staff working at home be circulated to members of the Overview Committee once available. Secondly, that further information on the environmental impact of the construction and future operation of the new building at Totbury Cape be circulated to members of the Overview Committee. That further information on the use of solar panels and batteries at council buildings be circulated to members. And then I think with the Chair's agreement that a further progress report on the activities being carried out in response to the climate change and the climate emergency be received at the March 2025 meeting of the Overview Committee.
Okay, so with those additional recommendations, we'll now move to the vote. All in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you. Okay, we'll now move to agenda item 5, the Nottinghamshire Net Zero Framework. Once again, I'll hand over to Councillor Cotty and Mark Walker. Okay, to introduce the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So, second paper for your consideration this morning on climate change. It's a draft, and it's a draft of an outward-facing, county-wide visionary document, and obviously we're seeking your input this morning on that document. It outlines the council's vision and ambitions for achieving net zero across Nottinghamshire. So, and it affirms our commitment, the council's commitment, and also it shares the achievements that we've shared you in the previous paper. And again, it recognises that only a small percentage of emissions in the county are directly from the county council's assets and activities, but it sets out that we can influence probably up to a third of Nottinghamshire's emissions. So what it's doing is laying the foundations for further partnership working and collaboration. You know, we want to be seen to be leading the way. The document focuses on really what we can achieve rather than drilling into the detail of how we go about that. That needs to come further down the line. And hopefully it lays the foundation for bringing our ambition into reality. So that's all I want to say by way of an introduction, but we do have a short presentation, if we may, Chair, and then I'll pass over, if I may, to Chenna Wright, and Chenna's our climate change project manager, if you're happy to lead through that presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. So the presentation will go through the content and the structure of the framework and outline some of the thinking around the structure and the content and the process that we went through. So the introduction of the framework focuses on outlining what climate change is, the effects of climate change, and the impacts that climate change has on businesses and residents across Nottinghamshire, which then allows us to introduce the concept of net zero. So introducing net zero as a solution which addresses climate change and helps to mitigate the effects and impacts to businesses and residents, but also introduces net zero as an opportunity for Nottinghamshire. So an opportunity for economic growth, an opportunity to improve health across Nottinghamshire, and an opportunity to improve and enhance and expand our natural environment and green spaces. And so when outlining this information in the introduction, we wanted to position it in a way as if someone was picking up the framework that might not have an awareness or an understanding of climate change and also net zero. So just wanted to ensure that they had that information so that they could have that understanding. So in terms of, the introduction expands to outline how the framework supports the ambitions that are outlined in the Nottinghamshire Plan and support in delivering the vision for a green, healthy and prosperous Nottinghamshire. The framework is also underpinned by the statutory obligations that we have as a county council. We don't have statutory obligations from a climate change perspective or net zero perspective, but we do have statutory obligations from a public health perspective and a transport perspective, which help to inform the framework. And then also outlining how the framework aligns itself with the national commitments that that have been made to achieve net zero by 2050, how the framework aligns with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, which are outlined within the framework and embedded within the framework, and also how the framework supports the Paris Agreement in terms of keeping global warming below 1.5. And then the next section of the introduction is outlining what Mark has already touched upon, which is that as a council, we are responsible for 2 to 5% of the emissions across Nottinghamshire. And so it's important that we use our sphere of influence to drive a reduction in emissions across Nottinghamshire. So that might involve procuring goods and services with organisations who are aligned with our ambition and our vision, using place shaping, being an exemplar of best practice, which can be adopted by organisations and the other authorities within Nottinghamshire, and then also building upon our partnerships and working more collaboratively to deliver those ambitions and the vision. So the next section of the framework, which is the working with others, is just emphasising that point of the importance of working with our partners to be able to deliver that ambition and using the framework to unite our partners around this shared common goal of achieving net zero and driving down emissions. And it also acts as a point of reference for all stakeholders. It gives a basis to be able to move forward and deliver upon the ambitions by working with our partners and also the districts and boroughs. But it also gives a point of reference for our residents and businesses. It gives them something that they can point to, which demonstrates that Nottinghamshire County Council understand that climate change has taken place. They understand the effects and impacts on businesses and residents, and they have a vision and an ambition to get to net zero. This slide is just a visual of all the partners that we've engaged with as we've been developing this framework. So at the very beginning of the project, we set up sessions with these partners to outline the intentions of the framework, to give them an opportunity to give us some feedback. And what we've done is we've taken that feedback and tried to embed as much of that into the first draft of the framework, which you all have copies of. There are some additional tweaks that we would like to apply to the framework just to strengthen it. And once we've applied those tweaks, we will then look to engage with these stakeholders again, these partners again, to give them another opportunity to give us additional feedback, which we'll also take on board as we develop the final iteration of the framework. But as you can see, we've been engaging with our districts and boroughs, the universities within Nottinghamshire, the partners that are responsible for managing our country parks, and then also engaging with the constituent councils within Derbyshire. Given the fact that we will all be operating under a combined authority, there will be a need for more partnership working across the region. So the What is Nottinghamshire doing to achieve net zero section is about consolidating what we're already doing that is driving emissions down and contributing to achieving net zero across Nottinghamshire. So what we did as part of the project is engage with officers across the council's departments to understand the commitments, the priorities, the projects and initiatives that have been established to deliver the ambitions and the vision outlined in the Nottinghamshire Plan, but are also contributing to driving emissions down and delivering the ambition. And by understanding the landscape of the council and what we're actually doing, it actually helped us to identify 5 themes that have been embedded within the framework that have allowed us to not only consolidate what we're doing as a council, but also use those themes to underpin the ambitions that are outlined in the framework, and also to use those themes to communicate a clear focus to partners and residents and business across Nottinghamshire. And the circularity of this slide is just demonstrating that the work that is taking place to deliver the Nottinghamshire Plan is feeding into the framework by giving us those themes and by driving emissions down and working towards the vision that we have for net zero. But also when we then eventually move into the space of getting into the how we go about delivering this the ambitions within the framework, how they will then also support in delivering upon the ambitions within the Nottinghamshire Plan. So it's just demonstrating how they support and strengthen one another. And then the last section of the framework is again just emphasising the importance of the sphere of influence, and then outlines the ambitions that we have to achieve net zero. So the themes, as I mentioned before, underpin the ambitions that are outlined in the vision section. So, for example, the communities and wellbeing theme underpins the invest in healthy and strong communities ambition. And we're under each of those ambitions, you'll see a scope of what we believe should be the focus. It's not at all exhaustive. And as we then eventually move into the how, there may be other things that we identify that we feel should fall under those ambitions. But it's again just to outline what we think is what we believe to be the focus to deliver those individual ambitions.
Thank you very much for the presentation. It's helpful. Before we go to questions and answers and open up for debate, I'm going to move the recommendations as set out in the bundle, page 55. There's 2 recommendations there, so I'll move those. Do I have a seconder?
Seconded.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded. Now we'll open up for questions. Any councillors? Councillor Jackson.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. A very good report and a very interesting report, and it's nice to see that as a county we are doing our utmost to get down to net zero and set an example. But can I just open it up to the bigger picture? As a country, we produce less than 2% of the carbon emissions in the whole world. There are 2 countries out there that produce more than about 6% of the carbon emissions. Although we're doing our best in Nottinghamshire, we need to send that message out there. I think the oceans are responsible for about 60% of carbon capture as well, and we're not doing anything to do that. So it's all right doing what we're doing, it's absolutely fantastic, but we need to get that message out there to everybody else. This is a global problem, not just a Nottinghamshire problem. And I don't, and it's great what we're doing, but we've got to do a lot more with sending the message out to other parts of the world. So if we're going to lower the carbon emissions globally, which is affecting, if it's climate change is what's happening, is that something to do? And I didn't see much talk on carbon capture. Because I also think we're trying to reduce the carbon that we produce or make, but we're not looking at the other end. We have the technology to take the carbon out of the atmosphere that we produce and put it back down the hole where it came from originally. So I would love to see a lot more work and effort being done on carbon capture. The technology is going all the time, so we can fight this battle 2 ways. Once by stopping carbon emissions, but also the ability to take the carbon out of the atmosphere and store it and put it away. So that's my thing. But I think what we do in this county and the presentation is fantastic, Chairman. But this is a global problem, and we have got to get that message out there.
Okay, thank you. So we need to shout loud and maybe have an ambassador for Nottinghamshire, which after May we'll have hopefully a very strong voice for. Okay. Do you want to come back
Yeah, thanks for that. I suppose there is carbon capture that's not explicit, whether it's in some of this. So what we can do is take away that feedback and maybe in this framework make it more explicit about what's going on and have a think about what you've raised in the broader sense as well. Thank you.
Councillor Fogg.
Yeah, thank you. I take your point, Councillor Jackson, but I think the fact remains in terms of net zero. We're in a privileged position in this country, or some of us are, and I think we've all got to take responsibility for what we do and how we kind of reduce net zero, and that's what we're trying to do here, isn't there? And I know it's important with other countries, but I can't do anything about that. And with respect, I don't think you can.
Well, we can send that message.
Well, yeah, but for me, I think I have a responsibility to actually kind of to do something about this. So. I think again, thank you. I mean, it's a very comprehensive report, and I thought it's really good read. So thank you very much. There are a couple of things that I was going to ask you. First off is around procurement, because I think again I referred to that kind of earlier when we talked about kind of council sort of building and the highways and stuff. We do have a responsibility, don't we, to make sure that actually when we are commissioning work, that net zero is in there and it's flagged up big time. I mean, there are other things as well in terms of equality and diversity and paying the staff properly and all that kind of thing. But this needs to be in there too. And I know from briefings I've had before when it comes to kind of commissioning that is happening. But it would be nice to see some data on that. Okay, that would be really good. The other thing I was going to ask is about partnerships, and a lot of this is dependent on partnerships, isn't it? And I know sometimes partnership working can be wonderful, and sometimes it can be really quite difficult, can't it? And I just wonder if there are any kind of barriers there in terms of partnership working, where people, for one reason or other, are actually struggling to kind of try and help us in this journey towards net zero. I think as well, I mean, again, the ambition is really good, but just to remind you, I mean, I think your administration announced a climate emergency. I think it was summer 2021. So this feels quite late coming, I have to say. And that's not, again, it's not a reflection on officers, that is. And this is really ambitious, which is good. What I would see is impact. And because some really kind of wonderful words in here, and it's wonderful the way it's brought together, and it's very comprehensive. But it's kind of what next, isn't it? It's kind of so what, and how is this going to bring us down to net zero? That's me done. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate. We're being ambitious now. It's good. That's what we want. Before we were being not ambitious enough.
Thank you for that. Yeah, sure. I mean, I would note your request in terms of procurement and maybe having a look at how we can put some data to evidence what we've done around that. In terms of partnership barriers, I guess some of the issues that have been discussed this morning are some of the issues that all people face in terms of, we've got issues around grid decarbonisation, we've got issues around the technology and the cost of some of this stuff. So I think broadly partners will, we're all struggling in terms of that juggling thing when you to look at what you can do, what the costs of that are, if you like, and sort of looking at that. But in terms of the this document, yes, it's a statement of intent. It's a call to arms. It's the start of a journey with our partners. I mean, I'll ask Chenna in a minute maybe to pick up some of the partnership thing because he's obviously had those conversations with partners. But this is the start of a journey, and what we will aim to do is to try to capture the impact as you've requested and report it back as we roll this out. Once we finalise this document and we get it out there, then we will start to sort of try and measure what the impact of it is going forward.
Thank you, Councillor Shaw.
Thank you, Chair. I welcome the report. Thank you. I noticed on the slide that we haven't tapped into the British Geological Survey website, and they are based, or they used to be based in Nottinghamshire, and I was just wondering whether they are going to be used as our partners, because fossil fuel, according to their website, in 2010 reached 32 gigatons, and 50% of the total anthropogenic CO2 emissions between 1750 and 2010 have been produced in the last 40 years. So we're at a crisis point, and I really think we should get all partners in, including the geological survey, because if we think about it, and we're going to pump CO2 back underground, we have got the facilities, or ex-deep mines here in this county, that we could be the forerunner here to actually use the facilities that we've already got, and especially in the north of the county where we've got derelict sites that could well be used for that purpose. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Shaw. Mark didn't come back on that.
Yeah, thank you for that observation. And they're based in the county as well, aren't they? The British Geological Society. So certainly that's a partner that we will reach out to and take that on board in terms of the potential for carbon capture. If I can return to Chenny, maybe to pick up the I don't think we quite finished Councillor Fold's observation around barriers to partners. I don't know if there's anything you want to add on that particular issue, Chenny.
No barriers to note that I'm particularly aware of, or anything that we identified with engaging with partners. I think that the partners that we've engaged with are all on board. They understand that something needs to be done and we need to achieve net zero. They are interested in getting into the space of how, and that's completely understandable. But they are on board with the ambition for net zero, but no barriers have been communicated from our partners.
Thank you, Councillor Creamer.
Thank you, Chair. It's just about the issue of carbon captures, because there is a danger of carbon capture. I was going to ask about the pits, our old mines as well, for actual generation of heat, generation of pumping water down there, back up. There's things that can be used for them rather than just carbon capture. My issue with carbon capture is it is kicking the problem down the road, because you're capturing the problem, you're not reducing it, and you should actually be reducing it at source. But capturing it, they've missed the last bit of capture and store. You can only store so much as well, so again it's kicking it down the road. So yes, it's an important thing to do in the short term, but I don't think it's something we should be looking to in the long term. We should really be concentrating on going to carbon zero and reducing the carbon emissions. But more of a statement than a question.
Thank you. Yeah. Adams.
Tiny one just on carbon capture, because you're right about storage, but there are lots of what's happening, and I think this is what's important with this net zero framework is, and it's important that it's not too specific, because everything is evolving all the time. And I think you may see in the way you're picturing carbon capture is, a balloon, if you like, you're filling up with air. At some point, the balloon gets capacity and it's got nowhere to go. What they're able to now do is they're able to manufacture things out of the carbon that they've captured. So a classic, beautiful example is diamonds. You can make diamonds. There's a process to make diamonds using carbon capture and the carbon that you've captured. So there are things, and also you can put carbon into concrete as well. There's ways that you can store it once it's been stored and manipulate it into something else. So there's you'd never get to that balloon factor where there's nowhere else to put it. There's always things to do with carbon. So don't fear that issue. More just, I think having a framework to work within is sensible, and I think it gives, like I said, the council an opportunity to tie all new tech as it comes online and different ways of doing things into a structure. And I think also it was touched on around barriers to partners, and I think the only barrier I said, I think, is something you picked up on, Chenna, which was around how we help those people get there. And I think that's more the thing. I suppose I would never want to see a situation where our partners are almost being, well, I'm sorry, we can't possibly deal with you because you've not put your carbon in the right place. I would much prefer that to be, we can give you some help on that, and we can show you how you can better get there, so that you can continue to work with us. You're still a local company. We still want to support you, supports local jobs, local economy, etc. But at the same time, we're giving them those tips and those extra assistance to join us on that journey to get there. So again, great to see a positive move in putting some guidance into how we're going to get there. And again, commend you for the work that's taken place.
Thank you, Councillor Adams. Sue. Oh, Councillor Kerry has some more to speak.
Yes, thank you. A very good report. Thanks very much, Shannon. A couple of things. I totally agree with Councillor Adams on that. In the same way that we're looking at influence of the pension fund, influence the companies we invest in to transition is a very important. Engagement is far better than ignoring them and chucking them away. Certainly, the other thing I'd like to raise is looking at page 71. We've got the socio-economic impacts and the health and well-being impacts. There's a line sort of feeding into both of them in terms of economic security and poverty and inequality, and that is tax burden. Putting too much tax into the transition on changing that is a very difficult decision, and I understand how complex that is. There might be technologies coming through that will deliver more for less, and I think we should focus on that. We should still continue to do what we can. The big question I've got is on page 68, which is the carbon budget graph you've got and the carbon dioxide emissions trend of Nottinghamshire. If you look at that, you can see that historically we were between the East Midlands and the national average. We're now above the East Midlands average. I just wonder if you could explain why that is. Is that anything to do with the demographics and the socio-economic structure of the county compared to others, with the urban areas compared to other counties or similar authorities, please? Thank you.
So that is something that we need to explore. So that information has come from, I think it's, we've got that information from central government. So unpicking that is something that we do need to focus on, and also again those tweaks that we'll make to the framework will help to strengthen some of the information in there. So that was something we will take away and try and get an answer for.
Okay, thank you. There's no other councillor signal to speak. The recommendations have been moved and seconded. Additional recommendations would be to possibly a regular update, and if we can clarify some of those figures, so how that comes to committee, whether you want to have a conversation with myself and I'll share it with members, or we just receive an update in 3 months or 6 months. 6 months would be better. 6 months would be better. Okay, so as I say, it's been moved and seconded. All in favour of the recommendations?
The recommendation in terms of kind of demonstrating impact too. I know that's implied in what you've just said.
Yeah, okay,
If
we
you
can
could
include
have
the
that
impact.
word impact in there.
We include the impact in that further recommendation. Okay.
Can we just thank him for bringing the draft as well, Chair, as opposed to waiting for it to go. This is a draft. We don't know, and I would encourage officers to bring drafts of proposals rather, regularly, so that we can contribute and make that contribution.
Yeah, so because we can it's additional scrutiny, it's pre-scrutiny, isn't it? Really?
Yeah.
So we're scrutinising it before we have to. Okay, so it is working. Okay, so with that additional recommendation, all in favour? It's unanimous. Okay, we'll go to agenda item 6, which is my report, and it's the response to the full council motion to support former Wilko Wilkinson staff in Nottinghamshire. Okay, I'll introduce the report. So you've all read it, and it was to provide an update on the support provided by the council for employees affected by the closure of Wilko following a motion to full council. Okay. I'll move the recommendations as detailed in the report and ask for a seconder.
Second.
Thank you. And any councillors wishing to speak? Councillor Foll.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for this report. I just really do wonder. It's kind of a general kind of opening statement. Is did we actually lead on anything here? And I just can't see that we have. I mean, when you kind of look at some of the work around, I think there's some reference to an event in Worksop, 2 events in Worksop. But my understanding is that had already been arranged, and we kind of ended up on that kind of last minute. I just don't. When we put the motion forward, we wanted us to be proactive, and I don't see that in this response. And I'm not sure why the county council wasn't flagged up more in some of the events we attended as partners. I mean, was response and commitment to supporting these former staff, was it an afterthought, which is what it looks like? And if you look at kind of a paragraph where we are, paragraph 15. It would be really good to have the numbers there. It says local Department for Work and Pensions colleagues confirmed that there's been an 68% return to work for those staff affected. What about the other 32%? What actual numbers are there in there? Yeah, again, you've got into paragraph 12, you listed all the stores across Nottinghamshire of the closures, and some it says, for example, I'm going to pick the Mansfield, still closed with good interest being shown. What does that mean?
It means that it's being marketed.
Well, yeah, but
and interest is being shown.
Yeah, but I mean, I just don't see anything really kind of in terms of proactive in here. And I'd certainly like to see, you mentioned, again, I'm being a bit parochial here, but on paragraph 8, along with supporting specific events from stores in Beeston and Kimberley. And in Beeston, you've just got still closed next to it under paragraph 12. So I think this is disappointing, and I'm not sure we've done right by the kind of the Wilkinson staff that kind of lost their jobs here. I don't know. Again, as I say, I think this is disappointing, and I think that the staff deserve better than this.
Thank you, Councillor Creamer. Councillor Creamer.
Yeah. Thank you, Chair. Mine is just a simple one. On item 20, there's been monitored. The headline for it: measure additional actions taken to evidence and demonstrate impact. These have been monitored whenever possible, and whenever possible can mean anything to anybody. There's nothing in there. Is there any kind of matrix that says something actually will do this in this time and monitor this start? We don't know where the baseline is. Whenever possible doesn't say when it's finished, etc. So I just want some explanation around that paragraph and where it fits in any future problem. Hopefully we don't have, but any future collapses of industry we have in the area, because it seems to be important what we learn lessons from the Wilkos and move forward. But that paragraph doesn't actually say anything really. Monitor whenever possible. I hate that. Whenever possible. I'd like to say, well, it started on this, it finished on that, or we will from now on measure everything. There's no explanation, so just a short explanation.
Thank you, Councillor Creamy. We have learned from this, and we hopefully, if another large business within the county, within the country does go under, we'll be there far more to support them in the future. And some of the other lessons we've learned from this is not just the branches of Wilkinson's itself, it's the effect that it has on those smaller businesses. So if I take Arnold, the Wilkinsons in Arnold, situated at the end of the high street, there's a couple of small independent coffee shops, cafes there, and talking to those owners, because the footfall wasn't there when the Wilkinson, they struggled. So working with Gedling Borough Council, this is what we've learned, working with Gedling Borough Council, how we look after those smaller businesses that are affected. And that's, I mean, it's by the grace of God that B&M's gone into there, and the footfall is possibly greater than it ever was with Wilkinson's, but those smaller shops there, because of the interaction with the district councils, because of the county council there, have really benefited. So that we have learned from it, and if you don't agree with all of the report, then we'll take your points on board. But it was a very quick, when we were notified of Wilkinson's closure, it was very quick, and obviously with it being a private business to actually get in there and having the staff wanting to talk to you as well. So, okay.
Well, what you just said, do you mind about the small business?
Yeah.
Because I think that's really important, Chair, because I mean, some small, it isn't just kind of coffee shops around, it's a supply chain as well, isn't it?
Absolutely.
So there will be some small and medium-sized businesses out there that will be really suffering through kind of Wilkinson's going, and it would be good to know that we've been a bit more proactive with those as well. So that's the point
about being proactive rather than having to react. Knowing our areas as well. Councillor Shaw, you've signalled. Would you like to speak?
Yeah, a fortunate position in Hucknall that the range will be opening either tomorrow. But what it does show is that we've got to encourage people not to use online shopping as much as we are doing. People are guilty of using online shopping, so they must get out there and use the high streets. Not only the shops on the high street are suffering because of the online shopping, but as an authority, we must be encouraging. We should be encouraging more town centre shopping rather than the online. In Sutton in Ashfield, the big Wilkinson store is still closed, and that will have a domino effect on other shops around it, because if you haven't got a dumbbell effect, such as we have in Hucknall now, we have Tesco's in one end, and we need a dumbbell effect at the other end of the town to actually encourage people to migrate from one large store to the next and have the facilities there that people want. Then you're going to see a complete dereliction of the whole of the high street, and that's been across the whole of the West Midlands, in particular. Stoke-on-Trent have lost their Wilkinson stores, and it's been a complete disaster for them. You look at Hanley, which used to be the hub of the West Midlands in Stoke-on-Trent as a city. It's now you've got one derelict shop, two derelict shops, three derelict shops, and we must prevent that. So if we can encourage, as an authority, to people use the high street and do something to actually promote our high streets and our literature, then maybe we could, prevent that happening elsewhere in the county.
Thank you, Councillor. I take your points on board. It's I know, having an 18-year-old son and a 21-year-old daughter, that unfortunately cultural change. They want things now, and they go online and order things, and it's their way of thinking that's how they don't visit the shops as our generation did. We went from one shop to another, and but any way in which we can encourage people to use our high streets, then I welcome your comments. Okay, thank you. Any other councillors wishing to speak to the recommendations are there?
Just sorry, Tim, just other than, because I was interested.
Last minute, Glenn.
Yeah, no, sorry. I was taking in what you were saying, because I agree with you, and I think the difficulty that we're in is there is this transformation of younger people and lots of people. Anybody in here that's probably not shopped online for something, although I haven't, but I don't like it. I'll be honest. I would sooner go to the shop, see what I'm buying, and if it's feel the cloth, look at the shoes, whatever. But that is a transition, and it's not, and it is affecting our towns and even the villages, all over. It's affecting and having a big impact, and it's something we've got to be prepared for, because other places are suffering, included. I don't go to Meadowhall very often, probably once a year, and the last time I went, that had been decimated to a degree by the number of major chain stores that had closed. So it's not just that. I mean, some areas still haven't recovered from the miners. Retford Worksop in particular has never really recovered from that as a town centre, and I'm sure Ashfield similar, and various other places, and that on top now with the impact of internet shopping is a big concern, and I think that is something probably that we ought to look at, because you're talking about the redesign in some cases of whole town centres for the way that they're going to be. But the other one is about lessons learned. I would like to see a paper come back probably to Scrutiny about the lessons learned from because, and also about the honesty of what we can do, because I think sometimes we as members think we can do X, Y, and Z, and in reality we can't. We're just part of a partnership. So I understand that. I mean, I went to the one workshop and I picked the brochure up, and we weren't even named on the brochure as being there. In fact, I've probably still got it in my bag. We weren't even identified as an organisation in attendance, which and we were, and I saw our staff there and spoke to them. But the fact that we weren't, it just seemed to me that was it an afterthought. And so for me, there ought to be something that says, this is what we did, this is what we've learned, and this is what we can in the event of, and God forbid there be another event like it, but if there is a major employer that suffers, this is what we can do.
What we're capable of.
and what we're capable, and what we can provide and what we're capable with partners.
Okay. So if those comments, I've got Joel Davis here, our group manager for growth. Do you mind if I bring you in, Joel? You can pick some of those comments up and maybe explain the county position.
Thank you. A lot of what we do at the County Council is supporting our district and borough colleagues. So we're very careful, and I speak from 15 years' experience of working in districts and boroughs, of making sure that we add value, we support, and we don't step on toes of what's happening at the district and borough level. So that's really important to us at the county level to be able to support our colleagues. So a lot of what we've tried to do with this area of work is to add value to what's already happening. So it's absolutely right, the district and borough councils take the lead on discussions with the shops, with the landowners, with the affected workers. So a lot of what I've tried to put in the report is just to highlight that added value that the county council brings. So the Nottinghamshire Opportunities website is something that's absolutely a county council led initiative, and it's something that's added real significant value to those people affected by these redundancies. I would like to think that if you spoke to your economic growth teams at the district and borough levels, they would say that we did add value and we were proactive. But that doesn't mean that we have to take over, nor does it mean that we need the limelight. It's more important to make sure that those people affected by these redundancies get the support that they need. I will take on board that perhaps we could have been a bit more visible with that, but it was more important for us to do what was needed at the time than perhaps get the logos on those pieces of promotional material. But I do take that on board and we'll go back. The other key thing that I want to mention is this is part of a much wider piece of work that we are doing with our district and borough colleagues to do with employment and skills. And similar to what you've heard today with the Net Zero framework, we are also producing an employment skills framework that we are again setting out a lot of what we're trying to do and working with partners on how we best achieve that. So part of the report and the recommendations was to suggest that perhaps we can come back and talk to you a little bit more about the work that we're doing, so you do get a better understanding of how we approach things and for you to be able to shape and influence how we approach that going forward.
Thank you. That was excellent.
I'm not just talking about logos, I'm really not. No. But yes, that would be helpful.
Councillor Kerry.
I'd just like to thank Joe very, very much for showing honestly, transparently, openly what we can do, and that actually responds in some ways to Councillor Guilfoyle's comments. You can only do so much, but we will make sure that bit we can do, we will do, and do it well. And I think that is really good that you put that into context. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Any additional recommendations, Martin? So we've got the 3 recommendations set out on page 86 of the report. Additional recommendations, please, Martin.
So hopefully this phrases what's just been agreed. So the members of the Overview Committee carry out further scrutiny work on the employment and skills framework in a format to be agreed by the Chair and Vice Chair in consultation with officers.
Thank you. So with that additional recommendation, all in favour? That's unanimous again. So now we move to item 7, which is the work programme. I think we've got. I've definitely picked up one thing from this morning's report. Okay, do you want to introduce?
Yep. So the work programme is obviously to note and consider along with the work programmes of the other select committees. Just to update from the discussion earlier, I noted that the Freeport is an area that you'd like the Chair and Vice Chair to consider including on the work programme for inclusion, and also was raised at the last meeting about blue badges, just to advise that we are doing some work with the Chair and Vice Chair and officers to look how the members might be involved into looking at that issue. So it's really just to ask if there's any other issues that you'd like consideration for inclusion.
Councillor Cole.
Yeah, thank you. So I didn't catch what was that? That was
Blue badge.
Sorry, what's it?
Blue badge.
Oh, sorry, I was going to be deaf, I think. Sorry,
Pardon?
I'm good. Right. So, okay, seriously. Just to say, we're getting more and more concerned about the number of contracts that are just being extended without proper options appraisal. If you recall, that happened with the Healthy Families programme, and that was subject to a call-in, and we will start calling these things in if it doesn't happen. Well, in particular, the highways contract. I mean, all of us have had concerns about what's happening in terms of highways, and I'm not going to go into that argument. It's not my kind of specialist subject. But in the way that we've just very helpfully had that kind of climate change paper earlier, please can we have the highways proposed draft report coming to the next overview and scrutiny committee so we can scrutinise it properly in a timely way. If it comes to us really very late with a week to scrutinise it, there's no way we can scrutinise these massive, impactful, multi-million kind of type contracts in a way that is our duty to do. And it feels wrong just to continually, and it's kind of across the board, isn't it? I mean, the contracts here you've got a whole load of contracts here that it looks to me like they're going to be extended, and I don't think it's good practice. And I think we ought to be looking out there much more to see actually what else there is out there and see if we can get better value for money. Our residents deserve value for money, and that doesn't seem to be addressed when contracts are just automatically kind of extended. So it seems to be common practice, and I don't think it's good practice.
Okay, so with that, we'll have a conversation with place, and we've had the comments. Are we all in agreement then with those proposed changes and additional items? All in favour? Okay, just before we go, there was one thing I had on the minutes from the last meeting, and it was Councillor Sam Smith was replaced by Mike and Councillor Introna, so that just needs to okay. All right, so far as I know is off. Just like to thank you all for your attendance, and especially really good if you could share those slides with us as well. Yeah, okay. Thank you. Councillor Howard loves slides. I'll now close the meeting and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.